So it looks like Palworld has already lost 2/3 of its players in 2 weeks. There's an article up on Forbes that all the gaming sites are quoting. So I figured I'd go take a look at this. It says here, Palworld initially managed to snag the #2 concurrent peak of all time on Steam at 2.1 million players, which put it ahead of games like Dota 2 and Counter-Strike. However, things are starting to drop off rather quickly despite continuing with high totals in context. So we've talked about this before with like Lost Ark, New World. Um, this is just the way people play games. So 2.1 million peak about 15 days ago, and now it's closer to 750,000 um, right now. It's still #2 spot, says only behind Counter-Strike 2, I guess, and still doing multiples of another new hit game like Helldivers 2 at 120 to 150K. So, I mean, it's doing well um, in the grand scope of a big game on Steam. But I think the big thing is people are looking at the 2/3 number and going, it's already lost this many people. Yeah, but we've seen that wasn't it like, I can't remember which game it was, and don't murder me if I misquote this, but I could swear it was New World right after Lost Ark. Or I don't remember the timeline of those two that well. But whichever one was the one after, was it lost like 90% of its player base within 3 months, right? It went from this and it was this huge breakout thing, and then 3 months later, like 90% are gone. But what was left was still like 150, 200,000 strong dailies, right? So in the context of a game remaining to be popular with a core audience, that's just the data that I've talked about for years, that when you any franchise, this mostly is from MMORPGs, but can also be applied to single player RPGs. Like, there's a 5 to 7% total player base of any given game that will love that game and that franchise forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and it's their jam. That's it. That's their big main jam, and they will main that game for a while, possibly years and years and years. Um, and so you go from 1.5 million down to 150,000. That's not that. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal in the context of that, because you still have your core audience. And if it's something where you're establishing a franchise, you've got a built-in audience for the next thing, for the next expansion, for the sequel, whatever it might be. So I don't think that this is anything to really, it's not news to me, I guess is what I'm getting at. That would probably be the easiest way to say it. It's just this is the trend. Um, and it has nothing to do with the game being bad. It's just we play different these days. We just do. We didn't have, a lot of people like to go back to the golden eras. You back in the day, we used to play games for a lot longer. Well, back in the day, games didn't release as frequently. We didn't have every week a new hit game coming out, right? It used to be maybe it was a few times a year you would play something big. And now it's like every month there's a tentpole triple A, you know, indie blowout. Like, there's always something happening. And so if you love games, there's always something to go play. And also, there's just the fact that, at least with me as a modern adult, I also have things that I like to do that didn't exist back in the day. So I like to go watch TV shows. There's Netflix, Hulu, HBO Plus, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Max, whatever the names of all of those. There are great shows that have come out in all sorts of different genres that I like to watch with my wife. That wasn't around in the 90s when I was just playing games all the time. So it's kind of natural that people cycle in through these. It's not that big of a deal. Um, excuse me. It's still getting great numbers, and it's something that for them, I think the last time I heard anything, it was something along the lines of eight. It had sold 8 million copies, um, which was beyond the wild expectations of anyone that was involved in the project. So, they really had to scramble to patch and do a bunch of other stuff. I tried it. It was fun. It's not not my jam, especially because right on the heels of that was Enshrouded, and so for me, Enshrouded is a crafting survival game that I much prefer just because it's the fantasy RPG element. I've never been into like Digimon, Pokemon, um, that kind of stuff. So, I tried this. I did a first impressions. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't for me. Like I didn't wasn't something I was going to play. So at the end of the day, um, this is just the curse of I jumped in and played. So I was part of those initial peak numbers, right? But after, I was gone within, a week. So it's like I'm one of those statistics here in this case. So it's very interesting. There is also that to consider when the way people play because there's always something coming out. So, you know, it might be different if I wasn't doing this for a living, but as a content creator, I'm constantly bouncing around. At the very least, to do first impressions videos, and occasionally things stick. Palworld didn't stick for me, and Shrouded did stick, which was a pleasant surprise. I think that Palworld's here to stay. It's going to be going for a long time, I believe. The numbers are still good, and even if this gets to the point where it's only supporting 150, 200,000 players a day, that is successful to this company. It's successful to most companies. Having 100,000 concurrents, people who are playing your game, um, that's no small feat, and it's nothing to be scoffed at. Even if they might have peaked at 2 million or something, it's you're 100,000 players playing your game is still significant. I mean, you could look at games like Star Wars: The Republic, Lord of the Rings Online. I mean, 100,000 it's significant enough to keep games going for 15, 18, 20 years. Heck, look at EverQuest. It's still going. World of Warcraft is 20 years on. EverQuest is like 25 years on. I mean, franchises can exist with significant numbers and provide entertainment for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players. So that should never be laughed at. So it might have lost its initial peak, but it's still fun enough for hundreds of thousands of people to play, and it probably will be for a long time. Anyway, that's my news article for the morning. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to tune in daily. I stream here and on Twitch, playing lots of different games. And of course, there's also the Discord if you want to hang out with us there. Don't forget to check out all the playlists because all the things that I mentioned, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Till then, stay safe. Happy gaming.